Welcome to the Gorgeous Gray podcast. I am Nicole Scott, your host, registered holistic nutritionist, rest mindset coach, author of the Gorgeous Gray movement, and the co-creator of the Menopause Reset program. In this podcast, we have real conversations about aging as a woman and all the pressure and uncertainty we feel as we head into menopause and beyond. Let's face it, aging is not an easy conversation to have, but I say it's time to talk about the messy middle and offer hope when we feel like giving up on ourselves. Let's talk about our fears around gray hair, our muffin tops, and even our dry, itchy vaginas and everything in between. I will help you reconnect to your feminine energy and offer real solutions from experts in their field to navigate aging as a woman. I believe we, as women, deserve to shine even brighter in this next chapter of life. So with a sense of humor and a lot of compassion, let's dive into these vulnerable conversations. Hello. Nicole Scott here for another episode with a special guest, Shane Moore from Kelowna. Thank you, Shane, for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So we are going to dive into a really important conversation that I haven't talked about yet on my podcast, which is breast health. And I heard Shane talk about breast health a while ago, and I was like, I want her on my podcast. Now, the title of her talk caught my attention. I'm not going to lie. It was called Tough Titties. Yeah, you heard it right. I'll say it again, Tough Titties. And I was like, oh my gosh, I need to listen to that workshop. So I did. And so just give you a little bit of background of Shane. So she's a body and health practitioner, movement specialist, was a massage therapist, but then she found MFR, which is myofascial release therapist. She's also a speaker. She's an author. She works with elite performance. I'll just say it, she's helping leaders and public figures heal physical, mental, and emotional pain to lead more authentically and effectively. And that's exciting. And we need more women like yourselves and professionals to help us go to the next level. And we will touch not only on breast health, but we'll have a conversation, dive into trauma.
Great.
Because we can't talk about physical ailment if we don't talk about the emotional. But
Absolutely.
Shane, let's just dive in. Let's talk. I'd love to just hear a little bit about your story. Like, I always love the story. Like, why have you landed in this career?
Well, I like to think it's just because this is what I was meant to be doing. And it took me this long to understand that and to be ready for it, really. Because I started, like, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, even from a little kid, I never knew. And I just kind of fell into things as I went through high school and university and after I graduated. And then I started working in corrections of all things. And I was a jail guard. I was a correctional officer for 6 years. And then I was a probation officer for 6 years. And then so I was working really closely with a lot of highly traumatized people. And little did I know that that would be a lot of background training for what I'm doing now. And it helped me get just a better understanding of what trauma does, what it looks like, how it manifests, and how it affects people's ability to even to make decisions for themselves as they get older, right? And so I eventually decided, and I knew from day one of working in corrections that I would not retire from that job, that career. As good paying a job as it is in Ontario, and like it just, I just knew something in my head when I walked through that front door in the jail and it slammed shut behind me, and it's just like I can't get out of that unless somebody pushes a button and lets me out. I'm stuck in this building. It's like, no, this will not be my forever job. So after 12 years, I'm like, I've gotten everything I need from this job. I've learned what I needed from this job, and I need something else. So I started thinking what to do, and massage therapy presented itself. My cousin was a massage therapist. She's still, I don't know if she's still registered, but she's worked as one for upwards of 20 years now, and she's like something to think about, right? And so I'm like, why not, really? Because I was more health conscious at that point. I had been through a cancer experience myself and come through with flying colors, but that's all mindset, and we can talk about that later. Um, but yeah, and I went to massage school while I was working as a probation officer. So I was doing both at the same time for 2 years in Ontario. And then I did massage. I started my practice for about 11 months. 11 months into the first year of the practice, I took a myofascial release course with John Barnes down in the States. And it was like a light switch moment for me. Like the first hour, it's like mind blown. It's just like, this is what I need to be doing. And I stopped doing massage and I just started doing myofascial release with all my clients, and they loved it. And things really started to change in their bodies and in their mindsets and in their desire to live a different life. And so it was like, I just knew I was onto something. And it helped me understand my own cancer experience on a deeper level, and it helped me understand how I was able to heal it. Even though I went through chemo and I chose to go through chemo, I talked to naturopaths, and I looked for somebody to tell me that I didn't need to do chemo, because I didn't trust that enough at that point myself. I knew I didn't have to, but there was still that little bit of a fear factor. It was like, what if this doesn't happen? So I'm like, no, we'll go through chemo and we're just going to have the best chemo experience ever. And I did. I was only sick one time after treatment, and out of 9 rounds of treatment. And it was all mindset. Like, I just decided that, not all, because I also took care of myself. I ended up going off work, for a little while, and because I became a full-time staff at that point. So I was able to go off on long-term sick leave, which was super helpful for me. I could get paid to be off, and I was still working out. I was doing taekwondo like 6 hours a week. I was playing soccer and hockey, and I really dialed in my diet a lot better. I was eating a lot cleaner than I had been. Not that it was really horrible, but just all those little changes that you can make to really help support your body. That's what I was doing. So, and yeah, and that has kind of really factored into what I bring to people now, and what I help people, sort through on their own. Because, I can't fix, as a therapist, I can't fix what's going on for you. It's, the individual has to be responsible for where they're at, and the choices they've made up to this point. And all I can do is offer the benefit of my experience and some hands-on work, and just see, like, because I see what's happening in people, and that's part of one of my gifts, I believe, is just to be able to look at somebody and kind of see where they're holding on in their body, and where they need a little bit of love and a little bit of touch, and just some connection to those places that they would rather not think about, or that they've shoved all that emotion and that trauma into. And that's really started to solidify. It started to affect the way the cells work, and has resulted in any kind of diagnosis that people are getting these days, whether it's mental, emotional, or physical. So in a nutshell, that's my journey to this point.
Amazing. I love connecting our audience through storytelling and kind of giving a background. And I think a lot of people can then relate to the hard, and then how you've overcome, and that health has been that priority for you, and you've got that gift now to share with so many people.
Mhm.
So let's dive into breast health.
Yeah.
I work with a lot of women. They're kind of anywhere between 45 and up.
Yep.
I know for myself personally, when I was about 47, I had lumps in my breasts. I was kind of freaked out. My naturopath told me to go see an emergency walk-in doctor right away. We ended up getting a scan on my breast first. I didn't want to go to the other side, which was the squishing, what do you call it when you get a mammogram?
Anagram.
I
Yeah.
was like, I don't want to do that. My boobs are kind of a
Yeah.
little on the large side. I've heard it like really hurts. So, but I had to live for a week of, do I have cancer? Don't I have cancer? All of that stuff. And, your mind just plays so many tricks on you. And there were like lumps in my breast,
Mhm.
but I didn't know who else to turn to. now hearing your tough titties conversation, I'm like, oh my gosh, I would have totally gone to Shane and she would have worked some of her magic. So let's talk about that when a woman starts to feel stuff in her breast. Now, I have very dense tissue, in my,
Mhm.
so I can feel sometimes stuff, but you've just brought a whole new light to the possibility of making sure that those lumps, those buildups could potentially be gone very
Yeah.
quickly. So why don't you just have that conversation with, that typical woman that maybe finds something in her breast tissue. Where does she start?
Well, the first thing I like to tell people is try not to freak out, right? Because as soon as your mind goes in those directions, that affects your tissue, that affects your body. Like what we believe, what we think, um, informs our reality, right? It really does create. So if we're living in fear of getting cancer, you're probably going to get cancer. And I had that exact conversation with one of my clients who was living with cancer diagnosis, and was told she had like 6 months to a year left. And we did some treatment and she's still here. And this is 7, 8, 9 years later. So, things can change. And the body creates these densities, these tissues, in a response to something that we're doing, whether it's our mindset and our beliefs or our diet or our environment or, any number of different factors. But the good news is that you can treat it. You can treat it yourself. You can have a therapist treat it for you. Um, and yeah, I mean, it's all of the stuff that's going on in our bodies is stuff that has our bodies have created. So it's something that our bodies can also heal because that's what they're designed to do. Um, I don't know. Does that cover what
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
were
So I like
asking?
it. So just a couple points. There's like, don't freak out and go to the worst place because we tend to do that. I did go to the worst place, but
Mhm.
in that going to the worst place, that's when I went back to the books as a nutritionist
Right.
and decided that I was going to get rid of some levels of toxicity in my body. So I kind of go, that was a blessing in disguise because I stopped dyeing my hair
Mhm.
and I started to do other things to tighten it up, right? Like, you
Right.
think that you're doing a good job, but you're like, can tighten it up
Uh,
even more, right?
There's
And
always room for reevaluation, and just
yeah,
yes, just
yeah,
tuning in a little bit more and what
yeah,
else, do I
yeah,
not need in my life that's
right.
or really just sitting with yourself and seeing, this is showing me something. This is
Yeah,
happening for a reason. So what is
mm,
this trying to tell me?
right,
And without trying to really
right.
overthink it, right? Because this is
Yeah,
not a figuring out with my brain kind of thing. This is
yeah.
let the answer come to you because it will.
Mm,
This I believe in just a greater power, source energy, whatever you want to call it. People call it God or Buddha or
mhm,
whatever. There is a higher power, there's a higher energy that we're connected to.
yeah.
And so whether or not we're open to receiving
Mhm,
information from them, it's coming, right? So
right.
we can ignore it or we can take it in and do something with it. And but really reconnecting to your physical self is super important. And
Mhm,
most people are not, because that's why we have the rampant illness and disease diagnoses that we have these
mhm,
days, right?
mhm,
And so really it's just a matter of coming back to you and what works well for you, because so many of us are trying to please everybody else and do things for everybody else, and we're putting ourselves last,
mhm.
women especially, and moms even more. And I say this, I have the utmost respect for moms because it's the hardest job in the world,
Mhm.
but you still need to put yourself first and show, because that shows your kids to put themselves first. If you're just putting kids first, then you know they'll see that you have to be a second class, or you're a third or fourth
Mhm.
in line behind the rest of the family. So yes, and the breast lumps are a result of that over mothering, that desire to really take care of everyone else and not you. And so that's kind of the emotional connection, um, one of them that comes into play with breast lumps. And so yeah, it's about understanding that connection
Mhm.
and seeing how you can behave differently, think differently about it, and really start to take care of yourself.
I love that.
Yeah.
So you talked about the emotional stuff. So when the lump is there, to ask the questions and, what does self-care look like for you as a woman? I love that. So before we jump into some of the examples that you can maybe share with, when you're coaching a woman, um, are there some things physically that they can do to their breasts that can help with the lumps, or do they need to see, a practitioner like yourself that can help with that release or do some lymphatic drainage? Because I know that's important too
Yeah.
with the lymphatic drainage. Do you want to touch on that before we go to the
Sure.
emotional self-care piece, which I think is just as
Yeah.
important? Mhm.
Yeah. Well, there's absolutely something you can do for yourself to do hands-on work and treat your own breasts. And that's basically just hold it, right? Just put your cup your breast in your hands, feel for where the lump is or lumps or just the tissue that feels hard or doesn't want to move. Like soft tissue should feel soft, right? It
Mhm.
doesn't have to be complicated or more complicated than that. And so the key is not to push too hard. Like you don't want to create pain. It might feel a bit uncomfortable, but if it's super painful, your body's going to resist releasing it, and uh, and then you aren't any further ahead than when you started. So just press gently into these restricted areas, these tight areas of tissue,
Mhm.
and wait for at least 5 minutes. Sometimes, longer. You could be there for 20 minutes if you want, just feeling what's going on, and you'll feel that tissue start to melt away. You'll feel that lump start to just soften. And what's happening is the fluid in your fascial system, which is connective tissue, so it's literally everywhere in your body, and it surrounds excuse me, it surrounds everything in your body, so it affects the way every cell in your body works. And so when you have inflammation in your body from any number of sources that cause inflammation in our body, um, stress and food and over exercise and all that kind of stuff, that creates more inflammation, and that turns that fluid into a solid, and that's why your soft tissue starts to feel hard. And so when you put extended periods of gentle pressure into those areas, it starts to shift that fluid back into a fluid from a solid state. So that's the kind of sciencey background of what's happening in a nutshell. Um, and most medical professionals don't really understand that because they don't study the fascial system in school. And I've had conversations with lots of doctors about this, and my cousin who recently graduated from med school, who was a client of mine as well, and she's like, we literally spent 5 minutes talking about the fascial system in class, and it's the most important system because it affects literally every cell in your body. So the medical community does not have the proper understanding of how that works in order to help people. Because a lot of people, even when I went through massage school, I I had finished. I'd been through chemo at that point. I had gone to my last 5-year checkup. Right, they kind of maintain, they check in on you every couple times a year for up to 5 years. And so the doctor had seen a slight, like a millimeter change in whatever shadow he was looking at in my chest. And I told this to my classmates, and everybody started to freak out because they're like, "Oh, I'm not going to treat you now because I don't want to spread it and I don't want to do this." And I'm like, "Guys, that is not how this is going to happen, right? Like, giving me a massage is not going to make my cancer worse. Like, it's just not. If anything, it's going to help my body heal enough and open up enough in order to heal the cancer, because the cancer's there because the cells aren't able to do their job properly. They're not, like, the waste is getting trapped in that tissue. The cells are morphing, they're changing because the environment is so tight and they just aren't getting the oxygen and the nutrients that they need in order to function properly. And so you're not going to spread cancer having body work. Like, that's just not going to happen. And so yeah, it's that easy. Like, just put your hands on it. Doesn't, like, not even just your breasts, anywhere in your body. And I encourage people to do this, like especially in their abdomen is so important for everybody because you hold a lot of stress in your abdomen, and your abdomen should feel soft, right? Soft tissue, soft organs, everything should be squishy. Um, you know, the fitness community notwithstanding, who says we should have rock hard abs and all that kind of stuff. Like even your muscles should feel soft and floppy if you're not contracting them, right? So if they're not, and if they're hard, then you've got fascial restriction. You've got that solidification of that fluid in your fascial system that is making your soft tissue hard, and that's making your body weaker, not stronger.
I'm giggling to myself because my kitty, when I lay on the couch, will come over and will, and I'm like, it's like
Cats
a little
do,
pillow there.
yes. Yeah. And you'll find if you start treating yourself, the cat will come and help you because the animals are totally tuned into this kind of work. Dogs, horses, all kinds of animals. Like I used to have, when I worked out of my house in Ontario, I would have all these birds sitting on my back step as I'm treating somebody in the treatment room. And I'm just, I could look out the door because it had a glass door, and there's just tons of just birds sitting there hanging out outside the treatment space. It was so crazy. So
So
yes, animals
beautiful.
are tuned. It's a vibration thing, right? It's animals
Mhm.
are tuned into that energy, so
Yeah,
they respond to it, and so yeah, dogs and cats will get into the picture as much as they can.
I love that. Okay,
Yeah.
so you've just offered some really easy, simple suggestions, which is we can do self-care. How often should a woman be kind of touching and looking for lumps? Is this a daily thing? Is it, I
Well,
think the doctor said maybe once a month you should, take a, over, like what is your recommendation for a woman to do the self-care and the self-love on the breast tissue?
Well, I like to, I mean, I encourage people to do self-care daily. I mean, it doesn't have to be breast checking your breast daily, because if you're checking your breast daily, afraid you're going to have find a lump, then you're
Mm-hmm.
probably going to find a lump, right? You're going to create that in your
Mm-hmm.
body.
Mm-hmm.
But if you create a practice of self-love and
Mm-hmm.
reconnecting and really feeling what's going on in your body and what, and you'll start to really understand what and we know, we all, we know when there's something wrong. We know when there's something wrong, right? You can
Mm-hmm.
feel it, and you'll just know, especially as moms always know when there's, especially with their kids, like you have that energetic
Mm-hmm.
connection with your kids always, right?
Yeah.
You never lose that, no matter what age, or if the
Mm-hmm.
kids have passed away even, or like it's there's always that energetic connection to the mom,
Mm-hmm.
because they are of your body, right? They
Yeah.
grew in your body and you have that bond. Like they just,
Yeah.
it's just so powerful. So, but
Mm-hmm.
we have this with ourselves. And so we just need to foster that connection and really get to know our bodies on an
Mm-hmm.
intimate level. And that's all parts of it, right? And because the
Yeah.
fascia reaches everywhere, and the diagnoses come everywhere, and the tight tissue happens everywhere.
Yeah.
So, and it
Yeah.
all affects everywhere else, right? So
Yeah.
your pain, like your breast issues, might be originating in your belly, right? Or in
Mm-hmm.
your leg or whatever. There's, and that's why with the way that I work, is that I want to treat the whole body. I need to treat the entire body, head to toe, sometimes more than once, or we'll spend more time in certain areas because it just requires it. But in order to really fully heal, you need to address all the areas that are contributing, because the cause of the problem is almost never where you're feeling the symptoms.
Yeah, I love that. So
Yeah,
true. Let's go back to that emotional component. So self-care
yeah,
for a woman, right? You mentioned about like the lack of self-care, or the mummy not putting the mask on because she's taking care of everybody else.
yeah.
So when you are working with a woman that, has discovered lumps, whatever that, diagnosis is, what kind of coaching do you give her so that she can start to consider, what does self-care look like? Because I think for so many women, they don't even know where to start. Like
Yeah.
when they hear the word self-care, you're like, okay, does that mean like a quick walk around the block after dinner and that's 10 minutes? And is that good enough? Like, can we have that deeper conversation? Because I think so many women have just been so numb to taking care of so everybody else that they numb out themselves of how they feel, and they're so disconnected from their body. So where do you get a woman to start on that process of self-care?
Well, I mean, that's always, it's up to the individual, right? And and how ready you are to start making those changes in your life, right? And so these are just the questions I ask people, and it's not about forcing people or shaming them into doing this, or like, because if they're not ready, they're not ready, and there's nothing I can do or say that's going to get them to that point, right? I mean, they need to realize that it's up to them. Like, your health is your responsibility, and I mean, unfortunately, I mean, we are fortunate in this country to have socialized healthcare, and we don't have to pay out of pocket for most of our procedures, but but the healthcare system is only offering the basic needs, and they're not addressing a lot of the stuff that I've talked about and that a lot of other practitioners are doing, because it's outside the scope of Western medicine and it's not covered. So, I mean, you need to be prepared to pay out of pocket for stuff too, and to really invest in your own health, and eat the organic food and spend that money, because otherwise you're paying for it down the line with poor health and higher bills, and illness and disease and the rest of it, right? And much lower quality of life, and living potentially in constant pain, or whatever you've created. So, but I really, for me, with people, it's law of attraction comes into this as well, and it's like, whatever you're putting out there is coming back to you. So what is it that you want your life to look like, right? And I have these conversations with people, and I mean, and I don't necessarily need my clients to tell me the answers to these, but it's just something for them to think about, and to really figure out for themselves, decide for themselves, what is it that I really want from my life? What would I really like my life to feel like and to look like? And what do I want my body to feel like? And it's not about all the, things that I have to do to get there. It's like, I don't have to kill myself for, 5 days a week at the gym and all that kind of stuff. It's like, some people that might feel good for, but a lot of people that's not. And honestly, you can overdo exercise, and you can overtrain, you can under recover. There's a whole debate about, that, are you overtraining versus under recovering? And most people are under recovering, in my opinion. But I think if you are doing the proper self-healing work, and that's really the difference for me, because self-care does mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And that can mean having a nice hot bubble bath with candles and stuff like that. Yeah, that's a form of self-care. Um, is that going to heal you on a deeper level? Hard to say. Like, I don't want to say no, because for some people that's going to take you to a different level. But when you're ready to go deeper, the person that can help you do that is always around, right? Like, when the student is ready, the teacher appears, right? That old adage. So it's really about where you're at, and what you're ready for. Are you ready for the next level? And with the intensive work that I do, and the self-healing program, like the online self-healing program that I have, it's about, like, that's really the preparation for intensive work with me, really is to really start to reconnect to your body, to feel what's going on, feel what's not moving well. When your joints are starting to tighten up, and you can't get into that squat position, or you can't get up off the floor anymore, or you can't bend over without worrying about your back seizing up, that sort of thing. Like, none of that needs to happen, right? Like, we, as human beings, we have been taught that is the foregone conclusion of getting older. And I disagree emphatically with that belief, because if you are taking care of yourself, if you are doing the self-healing techniques, and if you are doing things, even teaching your kids to really pay attention to themselves and their bodies and what they need, like really need, not what they want with their thinking brain, but with what their body is asking them for, and allowing that to happen, allowing it to have, allowing yourself to have those things, then you're not going to have this illness and disease. You're not going to have this resistance in your body. So it's really about, shifting this whole paradigm mindset that we've been given of lack, of fear, of, illness and disease. Like, none of that needs to exist, really. It's all a creation of our thinking, right?
Oh, there's so much there that you said that I was like, okay, capture that, summarize it. So I love that you say, like, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
Mhm.
Kind
I
of
didn't
think,
say that. Somebody else said that, but
yeah, oh, for sure. But I loved how you
yeah,
just like, I was like, oh, yeah, that's so
yeah.
true. And when I
Mhm.
look back and I wrote an entire chapter, my last chapter in my book, The Gorgeous Gray Movement, was all my spiritual journey and all the teachers that showed up for me at the right time, at the
Yeah.
right place. And I giggle because
Right.
like one of them showed up in a shoe section of winners. Like seriously,
Yeah.
like the morning I was praying to say, help me get through this divorce, God, and give me somebody to help, the pain. And
Yes.
she showed up and I worked with her for 2 years,
That's
two
awesome.
years, right?
Yeah.
And she was the one that was allowing me to cut a lot of generational cords and pain that I had no idea I had, and just
Yeah.
took my thinking to a whole other level. And I talk about that, and I just love how you say, like, if this is landing for you women where you're like, because I get a lot of like, I don't even know where to start in the trauma work. What does that even look like? So, Shane, where can they go to find you so they can at least take a look at your profile, reach out to you, have a conversation so that they can maybe connect to you at a deeper level to say, I'm ready to do the trauma work? Where can they go to find the information to dive in and have a conversation with you?
Well, my website is treattheelite.com
Okay.
or eliteperformancetherapy.org. They both go to the same site. So one resonates more differently with people than others, I think. So
Yeah.
because not a lot of people don't resonate with elite, which in my, on the website, if you read into it,
Mm-hmm.
that is actually an acronym for emotional experience, letting go, intuition, touch, and expansion. So
Mm.
it's really about reconnecting to yourself. It's about
Yeah.
wanting the best treatment for yourself. Not, elite is not a mindset. It's,
Mm-hmm.
it's not a social status. It's your
Mm-hmm.
mindset. It's
Mm-hmm.
whether or not you believe that you deserve to have the best, and we all do. I
Yeah.
believe we all deserve to have the best,
Right.
and not everybody believes that, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's part of the work that people need to do, is to
Yeah.
know that you are worthy of this. You are worth
Yeah.
spending this time on. It's about self-love. It's, and that is not taught by a lot of people. Like,
No.
as even as we grow up in families, if that
Mm-hmm.
hasn't been present in our ancestral line, then
Mm-hmm.
it's, unless there's somebody along the way
Yeah.
that sees that differently and that has that
Mm-hmm.
understanding and is
Mm-hmm.
consciously trying to make those changes in
Yeah.
people. And it does happen. Like, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
most of the succeeding generations want to give their kids a better life than what
Yeah.
they had, right? Whether
Mm-hmm.
it's just, even if it's just a little bit of a step up, they want it to be better than what they had. And so that happens just kind of as a natural course of action. I think that happens, but yeah, it's really just about, making those connections. And
I love it. This is such a great conversation. And I know we could probably go on for like another hour plus and talk
probably,
about trauma. And, I'm 52, and I say probably the most important work that I have done to date
mhm,
has been working on my trauma. It's
yeah,
been also the hardest. It's been also the hardest to work on it because you have to open those doors that are dark, that have been shut off for a long time.
well, yeah,
But it's worth it. Like when people say, oh, Nicole, like you look like you've got the most awesome life and you're having fun and you're playing and you're traveling and, and you're winning in life. I'm like, I know, but it's because I did the hard trauma work to allow myself to do the self-care, to invest in myself, to be like, heal my money story. I mean, that's a whole other
that's huge.
bag of
That's huge for people.
shit
Yes,
that you're
absolutely.
like, for a woman, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I
Well,
attracted him.
even for some men, but yes, I mean, money is a
Yeah,
huge trigger topic for a lot of people.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah, before I
yeah,
used to just save and save and save for that rainy day because that's what I was told,
yeah.
and that made me say no to a lot of stuff. And so
Mhm.
when I got to, heal that part of me, the yes just was like, yeah, sure, yes, sure, yes, sure. And then the more money came in, the more that I said yes.
Money is energy. Like anything else,
Right.
money is an energy. So if you are closed
Yeah.
around that
Yeah.
energy, that of money,
Yeah.
then you're gonna live in a lack situation. I grew
Yeah.
up with that as well. Like
Yeah.
money doesn't grow on trees, and you know how much that costs. And I mean that's still in my head at times when
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
mean I've gotten much better at just
Mhm.
not worrying about the price of certain things and
Yeah.
just but without being completely
Yeah.
frivolous and digging myself into a hole so to speak. But
Yeah.
yeah, like I did a lot of work around that as well, and I've worked
Yeah.
with different coaches regarding my mindset around a lot of different things.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
but I don't want people to think that dealing with your trauma stuff has to be hard, because it doesn't.
Mm.
I mean, dealing with your trauma, like that's what myofascial release will really help people do on a deeper
Mhm.
level, is we will get to those places that your trauma has been
Mhm.
lodged in your body. And you don't even need to tell me what's going on. Like I don't
Right.
need to know the story, because a lot of people get
Right.
stuck in that story, right? And
Yes. Yeah.
just keep telling the story and telling the story. And it's like, okay, well, let's resolve
Mm.
this, because if you're still telling the story, the problem is still there.
Yeah.
And a lot of people avoid going to those places because
Yeah.
they think it's going to be painful. It's like you are already living with all
Mhm.
that pain. You've already been through that pain. It's
Yeah.
in your body,
Yeah.
and I will show you where it is. And you will go there and it will be
Yeah.
gone. And you can just let it leave your body,
Yeah.
and you don't ever have to look at it again, because looking
Mm.
into the past is creating pain and anxiety.
Right.
Looking into the future does the same thing. If we live in the moment and we're just focusing on what we can do for ourselves in the
Mm.
moment, then that's where, the ease of it lies, the happiness of, or
Yeah.
just the calm, the peace, right? It doesn't even have to be happy,
Mhm.
because I think happy means different things to different
Yeah.
people anyway. So, it's really just about just being at peace with yourself and just being able to relax and not feel any tension in your body, and not, worrying about anything, because worry doesn't change anything, right? I mean, it doesn't make you get what
Mhm.
you want, or it doesn't prevent
Yeah.
what you are worried about from happening. It
Mhm.
does the opposite, really, based on law of
Yeah.
attraction. It's like that's
Yeah.
just in your frequency, is.
Mhm. I love that. Yeah, I love what you said about like it doesn't have to be hard to heal the trauma. It might be my story that it felt hard at the time because I didn't want to go there,
Yeah,
but for others, you're right. If you find the right practitioner to do the work and help you through it, that you can release and release quite quickly,
yeah.
what I've seen over my years. So
Well,
that
I there's
summarizes what we've just talked about. You want to say one more thing there, Shane?
Yeah,
Because
just a really
yeah,
interesting anecdote. My one of my teachers uses about trauma is like, trauma is like holding on to the tail of an elephant as it's charging through the bush, and you're getting whacked around on all the trees, and you're getting shit on, and you're getting, like, and it's just super painful and uncomfortable and whatever. And it's like, if you can let go of the tail, all of that goes, right? So it's just like letting go of that trauma, letting go of that story, and just knowing that that isn't you, right? It's just, and it's just a story,
mm-hmm.
and it doesn't have to be it's not your truth for today. It doesn't have to
Yeah.
be your reality, and it doesn't have to affect your reality.
I love this conversation. So good. So, we talked about breast health, how we can do self technique holding up to 20 minutes,
Mm.
finding someone like yourself as well too to kind of complement the work that you're doing at home. That
Yeah,
would be me. I love that I can build a health team. I believe in building a health team. You would
yeah,
be somebody that I would put in my toolkit, right? Like
yeah,
lymphatic massage, drainage, teaching me, showing me, even just doing check-in, right? Like the
yeah,
health team is so good. I love that you are a coach. I love that you work with people on trauma. I think that's really important. We touched on trauma, we talked on the emotional body. A lot of my audience is women in midlife that are starting to kind of look at the bag and figuring out tools and ways to release that. So if you guys are interested on taking your the next and you're feeling a little stuck or you just need a mentor, we will have all the information below to get a hold of Shane, and you can reach out to her and see if this is a right fit, so that maybe this is your sign to start working on the trauma And it's not just about healthy breast tissue, it's about from head to toe. We were just touching on breast tissue because it comes up quite a bit in my conversations with women. Shane, thank you so much for being a light out there and using your gifts and listening to the nudges to keep on up-leveling your skill set so that you can help many, many women out there shine in their light too. So I appreciate you.
Thank you.
I want to say thank you for listening to today's episode. If this message landed for you, make sure to leave a review and tag me, Nicole Scott at Gorgeous Gray Movement, and make sure to share with your friends. You can head over to my free Facebook community, Gorgeous Gray Movement, or subscribe to my YouTube channel for more inspiring interviews. If you are still struggling and need additional support, you can take a look at my website, nicolescott.ca, and learn more about my new Menopause Reset program that I'm so excited for. Until next time, ladies, be well and own your sparkle.